Hi everyone, today I bring you here a long forgotten ID, and well, it's not the best time to play it. It's Tennin Institute, and the reason why it's long forgotten is because ever since Clot hit the ground, it has hosted entire archetypes like 10 Fast Advance and Cerebral Imaging Fast Advance. Well, I'm here to give it a shot. It's not as good as it was before, but I still think it is possible to build a decent deck with Tennin Institute. It's a fast advanced deck that has all the advantages of being a Jinteki. Now, um, yes, of course I have to run Cyberdeck's Virus Suite as a result. That consumes precious deck slots, but hey, you're going to drag out the game quite long anyway. It's pretty good to have something that can purge virus counters on demand. I'm running the Space Ice Suite that came from Order and Chaos. I think it's pretty decent. I'm spending like maybe 6 influence on it. And I've also included quite a lot of big ice so that I can combo it with Mutate and Precognition. Now I know a lot of people think that this is a very janky combo, that so janky that it's not worth including in your deck. I kind of agree, it's not very competitive, but I like it, and it's pretty decent in the current runner climate where everyone's running Parasite. With Mutate, you can easily blank out Parasite as long as they don't have a loaded data sucker with them. And I think that's a pretty good advantage, being able to turn your otherwise dead ice into something more useful, perhaps very strong. Today my opponent is none other than Prepaid Kate, which is a worthy adversary for me, considering that I really don't want to see Clot on the other side of the table. Now, I mulligan my opening hand because he had too many agendas, 4 points of agendas worth, that's way too many, so now I have a pretty awful hand as well. 2 agendas and 3 rather useless cards. I don't want to see Archive Memories or Cyberdeck's Virus Suite at this point. So I place the end run on the HQ, and thankfully he's not running R&D, because R&D is completely porous. I forgot what ice I placed there, but it's something that he can easily break. I mean, it's something that I'm not going to rest, put it the other way. I think it's an Archer. Alright, so here I draw into my Crick. Crick is pretty nice, and I feel like installing it over Archives to deter him from running Archives, because the past 2 turns he has been dirty laundering and running Archives to deny me my Tennin credits. I mean, the Tennin advancements. The ice over HQ is an ice wall, which is pretty important because that is something that can start loading up with advancement counters. And he doesn't run this turn, so I get a free advancement counter. The Crick on Archives is purely what do you call it? It's a bluff. It pretends to be something big when in actual fact it's a Crick that cannot do anything at all because there are no assets or upgrades in Archives for me to install over. Now, Crick is not that good in Tennin because I'm not running any assets, and the number of upgrades I have is very limited. So early game Crick is really useless, but as you progress in the mid to late game, it becomes quite useful in recycling Cyberdeck's Virus Suites, and most importantly, Caprice Niseis. So they have to break Crick if they want to run through Archives. He gets his Mimic out, which I'm very happy to see because I'm running 0 small sentries. Well, I think I'm running a Surugi, but that's about it. Alright, so since he has no clone chip and no SMC out, I'm going to fast advance this Brain Trust while I can. It provides no benefit to me, so usually I'm not in a hurry to score it, but against Prepaid Kate, you have to get it out while the clock window is closed. Okay, so it's a Grim that is on R&D, and I allow him go through, but I force him to spend something to break the Grim. Instead, he does not find a Grim, and I'm left with the choice. Do I trash his SMC or his Mimic? Trashing his Mimic will send him further back on credits, but looking at the fact that he has 21 credits, he has been building so many credits over the past few turns, it's not worth it to trash the Mimic. And remember, as I said, I have only 1 small sentry, 1 Surugi, that is breakable by Mimic. All my other sentries, like Grim, are huge, not within Mimic range. So my choice is to break the SMC. Trashing the SMC allows me to destroy another one of his recursion pieces. So if, say, I want to force a Clot out now, he has to spend a clone chip. And that's 1 less clone chip he has to use Parasites, 1 less clone chip to use Dogs, etc., which is always good. Taxing Kate's recursion is never a bad thing, especially for this deck. Now, I really want to score the clone retirement here, but I know I can't because he has a clone chip which can fetch an SMC, which can fetch the Clot. So I have to hold the clone retirement back. I want to get rid of the bad pup from Grim ASAP. Okay, he does show the Clot in his hand. he installs it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to score it. I have a Cyberdex Virus Suite on HQ, so I can use it to purge Clot before scoring Clone Retirement. And yes, this is entirely possible due to the timing structure of a turn. I can score as many agendas as I want, res as many cards as I want, and use as many paid abilities as I want before passing priority over to the runner. So Cloud is definitely not complete counter to fast advance, because with Cyberdex Virus Suite, I still get the last laugh if he doesn't trash the Virus Suite, which he didn't because it was hiding behind an ice wall. So that's good news for me. The best thing is now I've cleared myself a bad pup, so I am now pretty safe. Making sure that he doesn't have bad pup during runs is pretty huge, because I need to tax him, tax every credit possible. I know that he has so many credits right now, but this means that he has used up most of his credits, his lucky finds and gambles. That means that towards the mid to late game for this game, he's going to run out of credits. So tax him while I still can. And here he plays a Sai on HQ, thinking that it's a wormhole, but I show him the ice wall that is advanced to 5 strength. Now here's another thing. You notice that during one of my previous turns, I triple advanced the ice wall. Firstly, this makes it look like a space ice instead of ice wall, but secondly and more importantly, this really makes ice wall very taxing. Not only is he spending a dog token, he actually has to spend credits to break through ice wall, which is pretty sweet. Now, the other important reason for pumping ice wall is that I need to make sure that it still taxes the runner, even though I'm using Trick of Light. Because every time I use Trick of Light, ice wall strength goes down by 2, which is bad. So I need to make sure there's an ample supply of advancement tokens to keep ice wall going and to prevent it from instant dying to Parasite. That's another important thing. If my ice wall gets killed by Parasite, that's a huge loss for me, because every advanceable ice counts in this deck. Alright, so here I'm able to advance the ice wall one more time with Tennin. Every time he doesn't run during his turn, HQ just gets more and more taxing. He knows he cannot run archives because he will get purged. His data sucker counters will go. So really his only option here is to run HQ and spend the credits just to turn off my ability and fetch data sucker tokens, which he's so reliant on. Now that he has 2 data sucker tokens, he can run R&D. Knowing there's a Lotus Field on top of the Grim, I can't res it, so I let him through. He buckjacks out before using a Maker's Eye formally, and spends data sucker tokens to get through. That's pretty smart of him. Knowing that he can only get through once, he wants to make it count, he plays the Maker's Eye. What does he fetch out of my R&D? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Amazing. So now I'm up 3-0, and so far it's looking okay. Here, I'm pretty desperate for credits, so I use my final archive memory to fetch a hedge fund. This is because I do not wish to throw anything else away from my hand. Look at my hand. It's pretty good now. The Brain Trust is good. I mean, I cannot throw away Brain Trust because I don't have a Jackson Howard to save it, and he might run archives. I can't throw away the Trick of Light. I can't throw away Mutate. Mutate is pretty good. And Restructure is money. You don't throw away your money cards. Ice Wall is extremely important for taxing his dog. So I had to use the least important card, which is Archive Memories, and the best thing to use it on was Hedge Fund. Now it finally runs into Archives, and I show him the bad news, which is the Crick. So 6 strength code gate, he allows me to fire it instead of fetching his Sai. That's probably a mistake. I'm going to place the the Cyberdex Virus Suite on R&D. So this does not purge his data sucker because Cyberdex is no longer in archives, but what this does is it completely prevents him from using data sucker to get through my Grim. He has to find another way to get past my Grim, which is Sharpshooter. Because if he goes in with only Mimic and Sucker, I can res Cyberdex and purge his virus counters, preventing him from breaking Grim, and he has to face the consequences of trashing a program. In the meantime, I do draw into yet another Trick of Light, which is nice to see, but it's pretty useless. I know he can still fetch Cloud with Clone Chip, so that's bad news. The good news is now that there's Cyberdex Virus Suite on R&D, I can actually score the next Brain Trust. If he does not run my HQ to get Brain Trust or R&D to break the Cyberdex Virus Suite, I will score the next Brain Trust under the guise of my Cyberdex Virus Suite. So he does run R&D having 2 data sucker counters, Now here's the bad news for him. He has no code gate breaker and he's maxed out on memory. So he needs to fetch both the sharpshooter and the cyber cipher. And he has to juggle his memory around. Otherwise, he won't be able to get through. If he fetches the sci first, he won't be able to fetch his sharpshooter. Because the sharpshooter is not in his heap, it can only be fetched by SMC. So what he does here is to fetch he fetches the sharpshooter with his SMC first, then he uses clone chip to fetch his sci. So this allows him to get past get through without the memory restriction. And here I'm faced with a tough choice. Do I activate Cyberdex manually? If I do, I'm forcing him to use sharpshooter. If I don't activate it manually, he has a choice. He can use sucker tokens, leaving the sharpshooter on the board, which means he's in a good state to contest R&D again next turn. I choose not to activate Cyberdex Virus Suite, and thankfully, he sacks the sharpshooter instead of using sucker tokens. I think the right choice there would have been to use sucker tokens, because they're going to be purged anyway. So, fortunately actually, this means that he has lost his clone chip, which means I can safely score this Brain Trust even without needing to spend 3 credits to fire off Cyberdex Virus Suite. So suddenly I'm in a very good position because I'm on match point. He has to get the clock back, slot the clock, because otherwise I'm going to score the last agenda for the win. It's not going to be that easy because there are only 3-2 agendas left in my deck, the last Brain Trust and the Philotic Entanglement. There are 3 medical breakthroughs, but none of it has been seen yet, so I cannot fast advance them since they're not 3-2s. What I can do, however, is to power draw until he finds another way to recur his clot. And just as well, because now that I've run out of ways to get my Cyberdex Virus Suite, I'm in a bit of trouble. Without Cyberdex Virus Suite, if he gets his clock out, I cannot score the last agenda, and that will really hold me back. Now, here what he does is to collect data sucker counters on R&D. It costs him a lot of dog tokens, but it's all worth it because he's getting another Maker's Eye run. He's going to see 3 fresh cards, probably lots of agendas in there. Finds a Future Perfect, and everyone bids 1, so he steals my Future Perfect. Whoops. That is pretty bad, because this means he's only 2 agendas away from winning the game. Over to me. It's a pretty tough spot to be in here. I decided to mutate my Lotus Field blindly because it is the least taxing ice in my deck now that Sai is out, and all I got for that was a crick. Very disappointing, but well, that's what happens when you hedge your bets. So that's the other good thing about Mutate. You can actually swap out ice that is dead in certain matchups. Like Lotus Field is usually a good piece of ice, but it's dead against Kate. Well, if you mutate it, you have a chance of getting something good. Of course, in this scenario, it didn't pay off, but it could very well have been a Susano. It could very well have been an Archer. That's what I was looking forward to. It didn't happen, but, well, that's the gamble you take. And yes, it did set me back quite a few credits, but it's still better than getting a new piece of ice. Installing it on R&D, paying the install cost, it's just too much trouble. So mutate is usually worth it. Remember that you bypass the install cost of ice, and I mean the install cost as in the cost it takes to place it in a new position, and the rest cost. So it's usually worth it if you're mutating blank ice. Alright, so back to the game. He finds his 3rd prepaid voice pad and allows me to advance the ice for one more time. So now HQ is getting very taxing. There's no easy way for him to accumulate data sucker tokens because there's a virus suite in the heap. And here I play Precognition. Interesting what I see here. I see 2 agendas, a Jackson Howard and another Mutate. Now Mutate is pretty useless because the only ice I see is useless. Lotus Field isn't that good in this scenario. Now here, what I do is to draw 1 card. He knows I have a Trick of Light in hand. I'm hoping to bait him into running my HQ multiple times to find the winning agenda. But no, I wasn't able to bait him. So because he can easily just pull out a clone chip and use it to clock me. So that was a good play by him. I'm not able to fast advance the Brain Trust in my hand. So here I had to use Jackson to find my last Cyberdex Virus Suite, which I did. So that's the thing I was looking for. Cyberdex Virus Suite allows me to score the last agenda, even in the presence of clone chip with Clot. So of course I discard everything, but I save my Brain Trust, because if he uses his clone chip and doesn't get his has no way to tutor Clot, I can fast advance the Brain Trust for the win. But I can't win next turn just yet. I first need a turn to install Cyberdex Virus Suite, which is pretty annoying. This really sets me back a lot of time. In the meantime, he does get an SMC out here, so that he can refresh his dock, presumably. He plays Levi AR Lab Access. Very smart move right here. This allows him to tutor up Clot should the need arise, because he has an SMC on the board. So yes, he's very aware that I'm on match point and I can easily win. Meanwhile, he plays Diesel. Now, there is a chance that he draws Clot with the Diesel, but I can't risk it. That's way too much of a risk. So here, I draw into another 3-2 agenda. Tough choice. I'm not sure what to do here. I know that HQ is pretty porous once he finds his dog. So I'm going to take a risk here. I'm still going to install Cyberdex Virus Suite. Yes, the question is which server do I install it on? It's either R&D or HQ. HQ is pretty porous. Once he gets a dog out, he can easily get through, but it's pretty expensive. R&D on the other hand, is not that expensive to get through, because all he needs is a sharpshooter. So I chose to place it on HQ instead, which is very dangerous. It's baiting him into running HQ, and that's bad news, because I have 2 agendas in there. But he decides to play the dog and not run. Oh no, sorry. He tutors the dog with SMC before his turn starts. So now he has 4 clicks. He's about to run my R&D. I mean my HQ. I know I'm in trouble. The only good news here is that he has no code gate breaker on HQ. So he cannot actually break builder. But he can choose to let builder fire and then pay through his nose to get through ice wall, which will be 8 advance. But that will pay off for him if he does get through, because he will trash Cyberdex Virus Suite, which means I can't score agendas, and he might find my Brain Trust, which is worse news. So here he plays Diesel, he plays Lucky Find. I'm hoping he doesn't run R&D. Yeah, yes, he did not run last turn. I win. Because I have a Cyberdex Virus Suite and enough money to advance my agenda, I win. He is able to tutor up Clot, but with Cyberdex Virus Suite, he knows that I will purge it anyway for the victory. So another important thing about last turn was that I had to calculate the number of credits I needed to res builder and score in the same turn, in case he decided to run HQ after all. So credits were quite a pain this game, but I managed to scrape by without it. Without any celebrity gifts. I have 3 copies of them in my deck, none of them showed up, so I was not very rich most of the game. I had to click for credits most of the time, but it ended up paying off. So this is really how to play against Clot. I got lucky because he didn't find his first SMC until I scored my first agenda, and that window for me was huge, getting that first agenda out. After that, he was not able to lock down my R&D because HQ was too taxing, and Archives had trick with Cyberdex Virus Suite. So that's another good thing about playing Grim. High strength sentries are not Kate's specialty, and if you can find a way to abuse that, like I did here, you can be in pretty good shape. Tennin Fast Advance used to be a powerful but boring archetype, in my opinion, but now that Clot is out, you are forced to play a much more interesting game, and with Free Cognition and Mutate, I think it ups the fun level that much more. So even though it's a pure Fast Advance, and Fast Advance is always equated with top tier decks, competitive level, you can still have a lot of fun with it, as I do here, because you never know what Mutate might bring you. So that's the game. Thanks for watching. Happy net running. Goodbye.